Back at the base, the little leaks were still working hard to build the sanatorium. Some were firing raw materials. Some were mixing cement. Old Bai and Fong Chong were still chattering away about something. The two of them saw the administrator. They were about to approach, and I asked them why they were so relaxed, especially since everyone else was working with great enthusiasm. Fong Chong mentioned that he was researching the method of backyard steel smelting. He also mentioned that the construction site had been handed over to Holding Blade, who has a background in civil engineering. I asked if there was any progress on Storm's end. Fong Chong said that Storm has improved the fishing traps. He uses mutated leech larvae as bait. Catching over 10 fish a day is no problem at all. The ones we can't finish are all given to Brother Tomate to be made into dried fish. The only thing to note is not to put too much bait in the trap, and the water level where it's deployed shouldn't be too deep. Otherwise, the large fish attracted could easily damage the trap. I consider these to be minor issues. Once you grasp the knack, everything will gradually become more proficient. I told them to continue researching the indigenous steelmaking method, and then turned around and left. I looked at the bustling construction site and couldn't help but think, everything here feels so novel to them. An experience almost impossible to have in modern society, where many people sit in offices all day long. Day after day, they repeat tasks that anyone could replace, losing themselves in trivial matters. Yet here it's different. This difference doesn't just come from a temporary sense of novelty, but from a genuine fulfillment of self-worth. After working on construction sites for 5 or 6 years without making it to management, a civil engineering dog like me can instantly be hailed as a pro and entrusted with major responsibilities here just by saying, "I'm in engineering." The vast majority of players are ordinary people, and the jobs they do in real life might not be particularly eye-catching. But here, as long as you have a skill, even if it's not that outstanding, you can still earn recognition from the group. And the surface outpost of the shelter is visibly improving because of each one of their efforts. Personal growth often begins with fulfilling basic physiological needs. Next comes the need for safety, followed by the need for social belonging, the need for esteem. Ultimately, it leads to self-actualization. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is the highest level of need, transcending any lower-level desires. And the spiritual joy it brings is unmatched by any other form of pleasure. Most importantly, obtaining it doesn't require a great cost. Even if the muscles ache from exhaustion, it's the game character who bears the fatigue. It doesn't affect the next day's life. On the contrary, going to bed early can make you feel even more energetic and lively the following day. However, these things are not important to me as an administrator, nor do I care about them. I just need to ensure that the number of reservations always exceeds the players on the list, so I don't have to worry about a lack of fresh new recruits to come and sweat it out. Quitting the game. FK. As the saying goes, please hand over your helmet and account to those who need them, and try a more primitive way of gaming. I believe many players might go crazy. Pushing open the wooden door, I asked the two of them to sort out the spoils from this trip. To be honest, the gains from this outing were quite delightful. Aside from the equipment, I didn't let anything go to waste. I handed the mutated dog over to Brother Tomato. Matches, a compass, a map, and a few pieces of jerky. There were also some plastic sheets. The two of them looked at the currency and thought it was some kind of casino chips. I asked Yi-Tin to give me the plastic sheets as I had a use for them. Yi-Tin didn't think much of this currency at all. After collecting it, he handed it to me. I reminded Yi-Tin not to eat these dried meats, as raiders usually aren't very picky about what they consume. You can't be sure what kind of meat this is. Holy crap. I asked the two of them what it feels like to kill someone, and they trembled as they answered. They said they didn't notice. After all, they thought they were in a game. What could they possibly feel? When the blood splattered on them, for a brief moment, they suddenly felt a desire to feed, as if it were a biological instinct. I'm really curious about the strong psychological resilience of the players. I can't help but wonder if the dreamlike state has dulled the perception of death. After all, this setup wasn't designed by me. I haven't used the players' helmets either, nor do I know if the world they see is the same as the one I see. It seems I should use my role as a planner to chat more with the players in the future. By 5 p.m., our brilliant players had already repaired the northern wall of the sanatorium. I even feel like my role as an NPC is redundant. Some talents aren't listed on the attribute panel, but are ingrained in their very bones. Give them a piece of land, and by tomorrow, it will turn into a field. The treasures on the construction site are not just those bluish-gray stones, but also the piles of cement blocks wrapped in burlap sacks. Although this cement has long since hardened and can no longer be mixed with sand to pour foundations, However, by shifting perspective, it can be repurposed as excellent bricks for constructing walls. Under the leadership of Holding Blade, players cut pine logs into 4 to 5 meter lengths and drive them into the ground. They fill the gaps with cement blocks transported from construction sites and reinforce the structure with steel bars stolen from the same sites. Finally, they pour mixed calcium carbonate cement over the setup. Once the cement dries, a simple yet reliable concrete fortification is complete. For the inner wall, Holding Blade plans to use cement and concrete waste to build a slope. In the event of an attack, players inside the wall can crouch on the slope and use the cover to retaliate against invaders. Considering the outpost may expand further, additional defensive structures can be built outside the fortress, complemented by guard posts and watchtowers for surveillance. The terrain of the entire wetland park is relatively flat, and the area around the sanatorium is a forested plain with no steep slopes that could serve as cover. I can cut down all the trees around here. That way, we can spot any targets approaching the outpost as soon as they come into view. Oh, bye, you're a genius. I really wonder what you do in real life. I'm just a civil engineering grunt, a marginal figure at the workplace, spending my days drinking tea and reading newspapers. Hardly anyone gives me a second glance. No, your skills are actually quite good. To be honest, I never thought I'd be able to finish painting an entire wall today. The sun sets in the west, and it's time for dinner again. Everyone gazes at the giant fish, as big as a wash basin, and can't help but drool with happiness. Everyone picks up their bowls and starts eating, exclaiming how incredibly realistic this game is. It even simulates the sense of taste. Fuji, however, finds the food too fishy. This remark was overheard by Brother Tomate, who couldn't help but curse under his breath. There's no cooking wine here. I've already done my best. Yi-Ten stepped forward to explain. In this game, if you don't eat, you'll get hungry. If you want, I can help you hold your nose and force it down. At that moment, Administrator walked over with Storm. Old Bai saw Administrator. He went up and asked Administrator to go eat together. Several people looked at Administrator, whose face was gloomy. The two were taken aback for a moment and asked, Brother Storm, what happened? Does anyone know what happened at the shelter? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Shelter 404 has finally reported its first player death. Could it be one of the newcomers, the fresh little leaks? Old Bai and Fong Chong were shocked. They never expected that this game could actually result in death. To be fair, unless you deliberately seek death or make reckless moves, it's actually quite difficult to die in this game. I didn't expect the third batch of players to suffer non-combat casualties as soon as they went online, half a month earlier than I anticipated. The player who died seems to be named Raven. I remember sending her out this morning to gather berries and edible mushrooms. Somehow, she ended up near the mutated leech nest. I can confirm the player's approximate location through the player list. As I explored along the way, I discovered that her last active area was near the mutated leech nest. I immediately gave up on the idea of retrieving the body. The offspring of the mutated leeches are manageable. Their mouthparts have degenerated to the point where they can barely even suck blood. At most, they just feed on decaying matter. However, adult mutated leeches are different. They swallow their prey whole in one gulp. There's no doubt that by now, even her bones are nowhere to be found. I announced the logout time has come. Everyone returned to the hibernation pods. I led the players back to the shelter in groups, settling them into their pods to log out. Alone, I approached this vital essence extractor, staring at its power plug that messes with one's mind. Clearly, the designer of this system had no intention of letting me steal electricity from the shelter. 7. Tell me, how should the synthetic substance generated through this thing be injected into the cultivation pod? It's quite simple. The vital essence storage tanks in the cultivation pods are detachable. You should be able to pour the vital essence directly into them, right? That is to say, it's also possible to remove the storage tank from another cultivation pod. I'm not sure about that. Master, you wouldn't be thinking of stealing. How can borrowing something be considered stealing? The generator won't be available until the end of the month. I can't wait until the end of the month to resurrect the deceased players. Since there are still 70 unopened canisters, we might as well make use of the vital essence inside first. 7 said shyly. What if we run out? Then we'll figure it out when the time comes. Let's solve the immediate problem first. But thinking about it, the vital essence is indeed limited. Maybe we should increase the death penalty to make players more cautious. Or perhaps implement a rule in the future that prohibits players below level 5 from leaving the village. I really can't figure out what perception-based Raven is thinking. Plus, this newbie who just died doesn't have any contributions to deduct. She can't even afford the death penalty. She can't just owe it, right? Players find out, they'll go wild. It seems we need to set up mandatory labor or punitive tasks to replace the death penalty in cases where payment is not possible. Decrease in favorability or account suspension for 10 days due to consecutive deaths. After a long day, it's time to tally up the work results. As the number of players grows, the daily changes in inventory and supplies have become a significant figure. As the administrator, I must coordinate and plan every resource. Building material inventory income. 84 logs, 500 kilograms of carbon, 500 kilograms of calcium carbonate cement, yellow mud bricks, and several hardened cement blocks. Looking at the deficit list. This consumption rate is way too fast. Looking at the daily consumption of 10 kilograms of smoked jerky, I couldn't help but frown. It's getting hard to support even 30 people. It's time to hire a warehouse manager. We also need to figure out a way to get a more accurate scale and measuring tools. Based on the statistical information provided by 7, contribution points have been allocated to each player's personal account according to the actual situation. New players primarily earn contribution points by moving bricks, calculated at 10 points per hour. Only Fuji currently has 0 contribution points. After all, making clothes is a technical skill. Using unfamiliar materials to create garments definitely requires some time to figure things out. Once she gets used to it, she'll be earning contribution points in no time. Few finally finished assigning them. Time to collect the daily mission rewards. Only 6 reward points this time. Added to the previous ones, I now have 17 points in total. Let's give it a shot. After all, blind boxes are forever the best. Come on, my baby, let's draw. Violet light beams out. How will Dawnlight's luck turn out? Stay tuned for the next episode. If I were the CEO of a gaming company and a beautiful player made a request to me, if a player requests the activation of a game recharge system and expresses a desire to make various purchases, I would prioritize providing a secure, user-friendly, and fair payment experience. This includes offering diverse payment methods, ensuring transparent pricing, and implementing safeguards against overspending, such as spending limits or reminders. Player satisfaction and trust are paramount, so I would also ensure all transactions comply with relevant regulations and ethical standards. Dawnlight nervously watched the outcome of the blind box. As expected, it was another pile of lollipops and a nanotech healing injection that could rapidly heal wounds in a short time. As expected, it should have been from a mid-tier blind box. I looked around to see if there was any instruction manual, but neither the side effects nor the active ingredients were indicated. Similar to the previous booster shot, this also falls under the category of products without proper labeling, certification, or clear information. Whatever. Just put it away for now. Another batch of lollipops has arrived. I'm really speechless about this blind box. There's also an orange-flavored lollipop that boosts strength by 10% for 10 hours. This one is pretty good. There are also chocolate and canned beef. I'm looking at a canned food with a 30-day shelf life. Is this really safe to eat? If I remember correctly, canned food was invented during the Franco-Prussian War in the 1800s. Never mind, I'll just find a player to test it out and see. Phew, all the rewards have been collected. Let's look for that player named Raven on the forum. As soon as I opened the comments section, I saw the ID Raven featured on the forum's homepage. Wah, it's all my fault for being too curious. I shouldn't have taken the risk. I'm begging you, dear game developers, please have mercy on me. I swear it wasn't on purpose. Please don't ban my device QQ. Plus, I've almost reached over 100 posts in that thread. Device ban? Let's see what exactly happened. Here's what Raven said. I admit it. I was indeed being reckless, but there's no helping it. Blame it on my toxin observation talent. Anything poisonous glows green in my eyes. It's practically torture for someone with OCD. I'm amazed, can you really identify poison with the naked eye? I just don't know how the detection mechanism works. According to the task assigned by the administrator, I started by picking mushrooms and raspberries in the forest. With the help of my character's innate ability, I could basically identify poisonous berries and mushrooms, so the efficiency was quite high. In no time I filled several plastic buckets and brought them back. I figured the area around the sanatorium had been picked clean, so I decided to venture a bit farther. As I walked on, I came across what looked like a parking lot. There were quite a few mushrooms there, and I gathered a good amount. Just as I was about to head back, I suddenly noticed a very tall, large concrete pipe, sort of like a sewer entrance, with a huge green glow coming from inside. I didn't think too much of it at the time and figured, since there were so many mushrooms inside, why not take a look? After all, I could identify any poisonous ones and just avoid touching them. Plus, I didn't see any dangerous monsters around. So I walked over and peeked inside. I swear I really only meant to take a quick look. And then something horrifying happened. A chunk of meat. I don't know what kind of meat it was, but it smashed right into my face. At that moment I couldn't breathe at all, and I couldn't open my eyes. Soon I couldn't even move, feeling as if I had been swallowed by something. Although there was no pain, the sensation was absolutely terrible. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, I suddenly woke up in reality. Everything that had just happened felt like a bizarre dream. At first I thought I had been disconnected, so I quickly put on the helmet to reconnect. Then I saw the words "connection interrupted" displayed inside the helmet, which soon changed to login restricted. No matter how many times I tried, I couldn't log back in. Now I realize this was truly a freebie. That player is genuinely brave, literally using their face to check the bush. If it were me, I definitely wouldn't dare to do something like that. The comments section is flooded with criticism from Headless Senpai and players who didn't get into the closed beta. After understanding the cause, I proactively contacted Raven's players and explained that the death penalty requires a 72-hour cooldown for resurrection. Raven was shocked after hearing about the 3-day cooldown. She had never played such a realistic game before. Having to stay offline for 3 whole days was something she couldn't bear, so she asked if it was possible to recharge. As someone without a physical body in reality, I decisively refused. I made it clear that even within the rules there was nothing I could do. I also mentioned that dying in the game would result in a deduction of 500 contribution points. This made Raven clutch his head in despair. Moreover, your current contribution points are insufficient. This will affect the NPC's favorability toward you. 3 questions in a row. I'm just asking, are you scared or not? That's it. I haven't even earned 500 free coins, yet I wasted a whole jar of my vital essence. Aren't you ashamed? Actually, it's not that big of a deal. Just a newbie, so even if they die, it's not a huge loss. The main point is to make sure players learn from it and remember. After Raven sincerely admitted their mistake, I won't bring this up again. I replied to Raven, saying there's no need to apologize to me. I was just explaining the game's penalty mechanism and the reasoning behind such settings. Later, please go to your post and also inform the other players. I will unlock the post. Additionally, I must emphasize once again that Wasteland OL is positioned as a hardcore game. At least in the early stages, there won't be many casual elements, and this was a decision we made when designing the entire game framework from the start. If you really can't accept the game's design, I'd suggest trying a different game or waiting until the open beta version is released, when the content will be more diverse and you can give it another try. Upon hearing that the helmet would be taken back, Raven immediately apologized more sincerely. She also stated that once she returns to the game, she will definitely work hard to improve her favorability with the NPCs. Just when I thought the conversation was over, Raven brought up, "Can you guys introduce some in-game purchases like gifts that can boost affection levels? I've seen other games have them like Big Nose Mouse Manor. Damn, what's the use of having money? Friend, you shouldn't always think about solving problems with money. We are a legitimate company. Traditional gaming company. The recharge page is practically shoved in our faces. But our male protagonist refuses to play along. Does he see money as worthless as dirt? Of course not. After all, in the real world he doesn't even have his ashes left. What use would money be?" Raven stared blankly at Dawnlight, who claimed to be a legitimate company and would never implement a recharge system. Isn't it just a money trap? Only the free ones are not legit, right? How could these small fries possibly understand themselves? Better check if there's any drama in the herd to watch. As soon as I joined the group, messages started popping up one after another. Hold Your Hand said, "Played it, and honestly this game is absolutely amazing. I take back what I said before. I'm impressed. I'm Untouchable said, damn, even you with those thick eyebrows and big eyes got bought off by the dog admin?" Girl Hating Knight X10 said, "Dog, keep barking." White Horse said, "No kidding, did you guys see the post on the official website? The one about the person who died today?" The Girl Hating Knight X10 said, "Saw it, it's Raven, the one with the long legs, 180 centimeters tall." Group owner, "Hurry up and find a way to add them to the group." White Horse said, "Get lost, go do it yourself." Fong Chong said, "Finished reading the post. I summed it up in 3 points. 1. Losing consciousness or dying in the game will force a disconnection from the connection. 2. Excessive pain sensation has indeed been removed, which matches my own testing. I have to say the game developers are very clever. Having no sensation at all feels unrealistic, but too much pain would drive players away. The current balance is just right. Still, I stand by what I said. It would be even better if we could adjust it ourselves." Girl Hating Knight X10 said, There's one more thing. Level 8 Storm said. Let me add to that. If you don't push your luck, you won't get into trouble. Feng Chong said. Exactly. Smoking Cessation said. I'm so frustrated. Why can't I ever get a reservation? White Horse said. Hey, why not try Brother Dwanlight's pay-for-play service? Smoking Cessation said. I'm furious. He told me to wait. Girl-hating Knight X10 said. My condolences. White Horse said. It shouldn't be that bad. Did you secretly badmouth him? This guy really holds a grudge. I checked his profile, he's a Scorpio. Smoking Cessation said. No way, how would I dare badmouth him? I'm Brother Dwanlight's most loyal simp. Okay? White Horse said, that's strange. I'll ask him about it another day. Feng Chong said, by the way, is Scavenge LVL 99 online? Girl-hating Knight X10 said. Not sure, I'll tag him for you. White Horse said. Scavenge LVL 99 ahem, what's up? I'm in the group. Feng Chong said, I noticed your character is a lizard man. When you take off the helmet and return to reality, do you feel anything off, like a sense of dissonance? Scavenge LVL 99 said. Not really, feels pretty good. In the game, my athletic ability is insane and my reactions are super quick. After logging off, nothing feels off either. But there is one thing I'm not quite used to. In the game, I always crave raw meat, and the sight of blood makes my whole body burn with excitement. But as soon as I take off the helmet, it's gone. Really strange. Feng Chong said. Why can you even choose non-human characters but not create a female account? Level 8 Storm said. Ahem, be reasonable, dude. White Horse said. You're making me a little scared. Feng Chong said. Get lost, I just want to try and see what it feels like. Pure curiosity, you guys know. Girl-hating Knight X10 said. No, we don't get it. Level 8 Storm said. Speaking of which, Yi-Ten and Scavenge, when you two went hunting with the administrator today, did you run into raiders? Yes, there were 2 raiders and a tamed mutated hyena. They were executing a scrapper when we found them, but that person had already been killed off by the plot. Then we took out those 2 raiders and took their equipment. Level 8 Storm said. You killed the NPC. Scavenge LVL 99 replied. It was the administrator who ordered the attack. It shouldn't count as violating the resident handbook rules, right? I even checked later. It only prohibits attacking neutral or friendly NPCs. Girl-hating Knight X10 said. I think those were probably spawned wild monsters. But the bleeding effect was indeed a bit too realistic. I almost thought someone actually died. It seems I was right. The world through players' eyes is indeed filtered. Similar to a blurring of concepts. If pain or visual stimuli exceed certain limits, the brain will block them out. After all, players being scared awake directly from nightmares greatly affects their gaming experience, which could deter many players. Now that I think about it, I kind of envy these leaks, referring to players who are easily exploited but still enthusiastic. Back when I first arrived in the wasteland, it took me quite a while to overcome these psychological barriers. Level 8 Storm said. Are they speaking Mandarin? Scavenge LVL 99 said. They speak very strangely. Sounds a bit like Chinese but not quite. I can't understand it anyway, probably just randomly generated by the program. Feng Chong said. The arrangement of this storyline is actually quite interesting. I feel it's meant to remind us of the hidden dangers in this wasteland, similar to the mutant tribe we encountered earlier. The purpose is likely to create a sense of crisis. Girl-hating Knight X10 said. Isn't it randomly generated plot? Feng Chong said. Everything I see is a pre-designed program. There's no such thing as true randomness. White Horse said. I think what Feng Chong said makes some sense. It just so happens to occur on the very day a new player logs in. It feels somewhat deliberately arranged, doesn't it? Game flow. Arriving in the wasteland world, encountering mutant blackbirds, discovering the mutant tribe, building shelter outposts, encountering raiders. Feng Chong said. It can only be considered a conjecture. I think this part of the plot can be interpreted as the outpost expands and the player's overall strength increases, conflicts with other factions and mutants in the wasteland will gradually intensify, driven by the struggle for survival resources in space. Perhaps this will be the main theme of the next phase of the game. In fact, preparations for war can already begin. I estimate that, at the earliest, after the Winter is Coming expansion concludes, the next expansion will be Outpost Conflict. Level 8 Storm says. Damn impressive. Scavenge 99 says. Amazing. This analysis is on point. Girl-hating Knight X10 says. Wow, just wow. Brother Feng Chong, your thinking is out of this world. Smoking Cessation says. Damn, I really want to play. Wow, even I, as the planner, didn't think of these details, but this guy has covered all the bases for me. He's truly a talent. I should copy this guy's analysis. Might as well just explain it this way. So tired, so tired. Everyone, please follow for now. I'm going to catch some sleep first. A series of beeping messages woke me up. Damn, who is it? It's so late at night. Scavenge LVL99 said. Brother Dwanlight, when will the server finally be online? I can't wait any longer, I'm begging you. Please let me log in and start grinding. Damn, how can there be such a person? I said I was just catching up on sleep. Don't you have to work during the day? Scavenge LVL99 said, he work? This game is definitely gonna make big money later. Might as well spend time leveling up, he. Is it really okay to say something like that in front of the game developers? I'm saying you should take it easy. The release date for the open beta hasn't been decided yet. It's entirely possible that the closed testing could last a year or two, followed by internal testing for another 3 to 5 years. Scavenge LVL99 said. Doesn't matter. A company as big as yours isn't even worried about going bankrupt, so why should I worry? That's some clear thinking. All the games currently on the market are trash compared to mine. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that it frees up nighttime hours already makes it incredibly powerful, right? Who would refuse an extra 8 hours of life in a day? I said, whatever you want. Scavenge99 said. So, Mr. Planner, can you let me log in? I promise I'll test whatever you want me to. I said, I can't control what you do, just follow the game rules. But isn't it pointless to log in this late? Game time syncs with real time. It should still be nighttime in the game right now. That's precisely why I haven't allowed players to work through the night. Even I might not dare to stay out in the wilderness overnight. Scavenge LVL99 says, precisely because it's late at night you might not know this, but my in-game genetic sequence is that of an alien species. Strictly speaking, night is actually my domain. Daytime is when I should be sleeping. Bro dev, just let me go up there. I say, I'll put in a request. Thanks, brother Dwanlight. Sigh. I've never seen such an enthusiastic player before. However, this guy's argument does seem to make some sense. Strictly speaking, night is indeed the domain of alien species. For a lizard man with Scavenge LVL99, darkness may not necessarily mean danger. Instead, it could serve as cover. I opened the player list. I unlocked the level cap for Scavenge LVL99. Gurgle, Scavenge LVL99 logging into the game. He stepped out of the incubation pod. Wow, that was fast. Awake? Perfect timing. I have a task for you right here. Task activated. At your command, esteemed administrator. At Wetland Park, directly opposite the East Gate, there is 76th Street where the mutant tribe resides. During the day, we also detected traces of raider activity in the northern districts along the elevated highway leading out of the city. I suspect there is a raider stronghold in the northern area. I need you to conduct reconnaissance northward along the elevated highway and search for any signs of survivor activity within a 3-kilometer radius. If you discover any suspected survivor outposts, mark them on the map and return immediately to report. Remember to stay hidden and avoid all unnecessary combat. Additionally, if you come across suitable targets, you may also take on optional hunting side missions. The rewards are valid at any time. Understood. Esteemed administrator. The next day, 6 a.m. Apart from Raven, who was eliminated for free yesterday, and is currently being remade as a clone, the other players have gradually emerged from their incubation pods. As for Sir Scavenge, who went out earlier, he hasn't returned yet. However, Dawnlight can confirm through the player list that Sir Scavenge is still alive, and not too far from Wetland Park. Oldby found me and asked if I had any plans for today. After all, if the plot gets triggered, it would be absolutely awesome. Dawnlight told Oldby to check the bulletin board himself and feel free to take initiative, as the shelter's top priorities right now are food and fortifications. The wall of the outpost has been completed on one side. The remaining 3 walls should be completed within 2 days. Right now, I'm more concerned that the increasing activity at the front station might alert the mutant tribe on 76th Street to the east, which wouldn't be good. After all, the shelter only has 3 guns right now. 2 of them are just 5mm squirt guns. Against those greenskin muscle brutes, it's not that they are completely defenseless, but they would definitely get beaten up badly. Probably only one of them could manage to escape. If these players, especially the female ones, were captured by the mutants, that would truly be a fate worse than death. Usually, their minds would break before their bodies do. Although being captured might result in a forced disconnection, they might not be aware of what happens afterward. While I was still pondering the issue, Yi Tin and Fong Chong asked me about Sir Scavenge's whereabouts. I casually replied that I had assigned him a special task. Upon hearing this, all 4 of them turned red-eyed. After all, Being able to take on a task from the administrator meant earning contribution points like crazy. I glanced at the four of them and still decided to bring Fong Chong, who could write strategies along. After all, having a brain is a valuable thing. Also, there was Yi Tin with his perception abilities. Upon hearing this, Fong Chang's eyes lit up, while Old Bai once again turned red-eyed with envy, jealous of those who got to work on tasks with the administrator every day. Fong Chong suddenly remembered what he had just said to Old Bai when he logged on. The two of them were going to study backyard steelmaking together. But then he thought about it. Steelmaking is nowhere near as appealing as following the administrator on missions. It's not just the generous rewards from the administrator. Just the first-hand intel from the outside wasteland is enough to get me excited. Mutant Dungeon has opened. Fong Chong said to Old Bai, "Wait for me to come back and we'll smelt steel together." Old Bai, with a dazed look in his eyes, just uttered "get lost," and didn't want to pay any attention to Fong Chong. Dawnlight led the two to the weapons warehouse, took out the only two 5mm small pipe guns, and explained to them how to use the firearms, as well as not to turn off the safety unless in combat. I have issued the mission for this time, which is to go to the bronze farmland near Bait Street to exchange supplies. You must be clear about this mission. Unless absolutely necessary, you are not to open fire and create conflicts. We currently represent all members of Vault 404. Do you understand? Both of them eagerly expressed their understanding. After all, you can't just increase favorability every day. How lucky it is to be able to go on a mission with the administrator. Although I find the flattery from both of them quite exasperating. But I'm still glad that the players are so deeply immersed in the game. My dominance over the players is, in a sense, directly proportional to their level of immersion. I told the two to quiet down. We need to carry 50 kilograms of smoked meat, 20 kilograms of smoked fish, 10 pieces of mutated hyena fur, and a handcart for transport. You two go prepare together. We'll set off in 10 minutes. The two bowed in acknowledgement, and the three set off toward the ruins. Dawnlight knew that the shelter was severely lacking in the tools needed for construction. For example, small tools such as screwdrivers, screws, nails, wrenches, and so on. The tools currently in use are all made of wood by mosquito, which still results in relatively low efficiency. In the more than 200 years since the wasteland era, resources have become extremely scarce, but nothing is absolute. There will always be some valuable items discovered by people. These items are usually sold by scrappers to nearby survivor settlements, displayed as junk on shelves for passing caravans to pick through. I pulled two players to disguise themselves as a caravan. We headed to the nearby bronze farmland to trade for the supplies needed by the outpost. I set out from the south gate of Wetland Park with Yi Tin and Fong Chong, avoiding 76th Street, and headed toward bronze farmland. First, no one there knows me, and second, the road to bronze farmland is a bit easier to travel, passing through relatively fewer ruined cities. Although it looks close on the map, Yi Tin and Fong Chong were still exhausted. Our group had to detour around impassable ruins along the way, and we even encountered hostile survivors. Finally, before 9 a.m., we reached our destination. It truly looks like an estate. Stone walls enclose the entire property, and the tall iron gate sharply divides the inside from the outside. Unlike Bait Street, which has a large number of freedmen, the farm owners of bronze farmland are true landowners. There are only two types of people here. One is the farm owners' enforcers and the rest are serfs. But I am not afraid of any malicious intent they might have towards me, as typically, two opposing forces do not actively attack outsiders. At that moment, a hunting rifle was pointed at us. I signaled to Yi Tin and Fong Chong not to make any rash moves. Hey, stop. Who are you? What are you doing here? I had brought Yi Tin and Fong Chong to bronze farmland to exchange for daily necessities. As soon as we arrived at the gate, we were spotted by the farm owners' enforcers at bronze farmland, who ordered us to stand still and not move. Dawnlight explained the purpose of their visit, stating they only hoped to exchange some daily supplies with the farm owner. The farm owner's enforcer took off his sunglasses and carefully examined Dawnlight and the other two. I don't think I've seen you before. Where are you from? Dawnlight clarified that they came from the wilderness and happened to be passing by today, so they wanted to come in exchange for some daily necessities. Nomads. Dawnlight said. It depends on how you interpret it. Nomads are not uncommon in the wasteland, especially in the suburban areas. They could even be considered a fairly common presence. These individuals typically do not enter urban areas, mainly roaming the wilderness between cities. They primarily survive by hunting and migrate from place to place. Occasionally, they also engage in trade like merchants, exchanging hunted game and collected scrap for daily necessities. Of course, they occasionally resort to robbery as well. In this wasteland world where survival of the fittest reigns, there are no absolute definitions of good or evil. Under specific circumstances and conditions, anyone can become a raider. Seeing that all 3 members of Dawnlight were armed, the farm owners' enforcers dared not double-cross them, unsure of how many survivors remained in their tribe. After careful consideration, the farm owners' enforcers finally asked Dawnlight what supplies they wanted to trade for. I listed the supplies I currently have and expressed my need to exchange for hardware tools and crops grown from the land. I also made a promise that once the trade is successful, we will leave immediately and not disrupt your lives. The farmers' enforcers saw the sincerity of the group and truly believed they were here to exchange supplies. After saying they needed to consult with the farmer, they turned and left. Yi Tin looked at this survivor outpost and said to Feng Chang, "This is way more impressive than our shelter," adding that the architectural style had a post-apocalyptic vibe. Feng Chang excitedly remarked, "Finally, new content has been updated. This game is really thrilling." I didn't understand a single word of that farmer's enforcer's gibberish, and his expression was really asking for a beating. Crunch, the farm gate swung open from the inside. A serf pulled a cart out through the gate, followed by 2 enforcers, while several others stood guard at the entrance. On the cart were 4 sacks of grain and a basket of metal tools. One of the enforcers stepped forward. The 2 exchanged introductions. Lu Lunar and Dawnlight. Lu Lunar wanted to know about the supplies I had. I turned sideways to let him step forward and inspect the goods myself. I explained that the jerky was made from mutated dog meat, and the smoked fish were from catfish and crucian carp. Lu Lunar untied the burlap sack. He took out some of the jerky. He cut off a small piece. He threw it to the serf pushing the cart and asked him to try it. The serf cautiously took a bite and identified it as meat from a mutated dog, unsalted, purely air-dried. After waiting 10 minutes and observing that the serf showed no adverse effects, confirming the meat was not poisonous, Lu Lunar agreed to the transaction. Lu Lunar said, 1 kilogram of smoked meat or smoked fish for 2 kilograms of green wheat or 2 kilograms of sheep horn potatoes. Furs for tools, 1 piece for 1 item. 1 kilogram of smoked meat is exchanged for at least 5 kilograms of grain, with half being green wheat and the other half sheep horn potatoes. Additionally, these furs are all of the finest quality, with each piece worth at least 3 tools in exchange. Dawnlight confidently stated that she had been to Bates Street before, and was well aware of the market conditions there. Lu Lunar was also at a loss with this difficult client. When I saw Lu Lunar standing there silently, I thought I had quoted too high a price. Lu Lunar said, "Deal." This deal left me utterly stunned. Do people on the farmer's side never bargain when doing business? But I couldn't help but narrow my eyes. It felt like having a bucket of cold water poured over me on a scorching summer day. That damn town chief has always sold me grain at exorbitant prices. The 2 of them looked at Lu Lunar and nodded. This deal should be settled. So why does administrator's expression look so grim? 50 kilograms of dried black meat and 20 kilograms of smoked fish were exchanged for a total of 350 kilograms of green wheat and horned potatoes. The remaining 10 pieces of fur were traded for 30 tools. I specifically selected higher quality items, preferably pre-war alloy products. Although these are all antiques, they are far superior to the civilian-grade goods in the wasteland world. The 2 parties shook hands, marking the end of the transaction. Lu Lunar was quite satisfied with the gains and welcomed me to come again. My expression, however, was as unpleasant as if I had eaten shit. After all, being cheated by the mayor on Bates Street and then by the farmer here, who could possibly accept that? Lu Lunar made a request for tobacco leaves, which are excellent for relieving fatigue, and can also enhance the flavor when added to food. Dawnlight stated that all available items for trade had already been presented this time, and any further transactions would have to wait until the next opportunity. Dawnlight fantasized about whether they should trade for 1 or 2 slaves to bring back next time. After all, things not enjoyed in the original world could still be indulged in within the wasteland world. But now there are no more items left to trade. Well, maybe next time Lu Lunar said this tobacco doesn't cost any money and just tossed it into my hands. Only a fool would turn down free stuff. Why not exchange it for a chip or 2? Wouldn't that be great? 3 people pushed carts loaded with goods and returned to the shelter. Yi Tin excitedly said to Feng Chang, "That was the new map Bronze Farmland, right?" Feng Chang replied, "Seems like that's the name. If nothing goes wrong, what we're testing today should be the trading system and the new neutral faction outpost. I guess the next update will probably introduce a brand new merchant trading gameplay. Do you remember what the game designer told us before? The economic system of Wasteland OL will be designed based on a completely realistic supply and demand system. Exchanging resources with other survivor settlements is essential. Wow, hearing that makes me so excited for the open beta. The open beta is probably still a long way off. This game company has big ambitions, so there's likely a lot more content to test. Fighting monsters, building, and trading. However, I feel that even before the open beta, by the time it reaches the closed beta stage, the game content should already be quite rich. But then again, are you sure that Brother Dwanlight, the game designer, can't hear you talking about him here? After hearing what Yi-Ten said, I'm feeling really nervous. He yelled at the sky, Brother Dwanlight, I was wrong. You're my dad. Dawnlight was speechless. Truly, the joys of foolish youth are many. Likes and follows for support. Thank you, bros. After the three of them, Dawnlight, finished trading supplies at Bronze Farmland, they pushed the fully loaded carts back toward the shelter. Walking through the dilapidated city ruins, with blood still trickling down the walls, Dawnlight suddenly sensed that danger was approaching him. He quickly took cover against the wall and surveyed the surroundings, but surprisingly, a four-legged, two-armed crawler was clinging high up on the wall. Why would a crawler be out in broad daylight? The crawler bared its teeth at me, poised to attack. But our protagonist, always a step ahead, drew his gun and unleashed a barrage of shots at the crawler. But because the distance was too great, none of the shots hit, and it drew gunfire from Dawnlight. Crawler felt an overwhelming rage and charged straight toward Dawnlight. At that moment, Yi-Tian, Fong Chong, and the others thought they were utterly terrified. No, players like them would only get excited at the sight of a new monster. Continuous attacks still failed to hit the crawler. Dawnlight is very anxious about her current situation. Both of them still hope to join forces with the administrator to repel the crawler. Dawnlight thought to herself, Nars are all zombies, but crawlers can think and hunt like living beings. But this creature fears sunlight. Who on earth was the fool that provoked it? The crawler jumped out from the other side of the balcony again. I quickly launched a series of continuous attacks, but I still failed to hit the slippery crawler. The crawler was simply too fast, making me hesitate to shoot for a moment. Watching the crawler getting closer and closer, I steadied my mind, aimed at the target and fired a shot. Finally, a gunshot wound was left on the crawler's right shoulder. Both sides fell into a brief calm. Crawler was also lying on the ground, his body trembling uncontrollably. Yi-Ten and Fong Chong seized the opportunity, firing continuously at Crawler. Crawler charged towards the three despite the gunfire, yet our Crawler remained completely unscathed. Even a blind person couldn't have such terrible luck with a gun. Just as Fong Chong thought he was about to enjoy a 3-day cooldown, Crawler didn't even glance at Fong Chong and Yi-Ten. He walked straight toward Dawnlight. Crawler and Dawnlight faced each other directly, which made Dawnlight feel immense pressure. It instantly pounced toward Dawnlight on the opposite side. At that moment, Dawnlight knew that using firearms could no longer harm Crawler, so he resolutely discarded his Xiaomi rifle. He drew the long blade from his back and held it in front of him. Crawler clamped its jaws around Dawnlight's long blade. This puts our Dawnlight in a dilemma. Although Dawnlight's power level of 9.9 far exceeds that of ordinary people, it still falls short compared to Crawler. With one forceful move, Crawler slammed Dawnlight to the ground and sent him flying. He crashed heavily into the dilapidated green passenger bus. Such a vast disparity is truly despair-inducing. How will our protagonist turn the tide later? Or will he meet a gruesome end? Stay tuned for the next episode. Why would Crawler, who supposedly dislikes light, appear in broad daylight to hunt? Attacked by Crawler, Dawnlight coughed up blood. Crawler approached him, and the overwhelming sense of pressure made Dawnlight tighten his grip on his long blade. Crawler swiftly closed in on Dawnlight, opening its mouth as if to devour him, all because Dawnlight had earlier injured it with a gunshot. Boom! Once again, Dawnlight blocked Crawler's attack with his long blade. At this critical moment of life and death, the power hidden within the gene sequence surged forth in great waves. I let out a furious roar. I distanced myself from the Crawler. The Crawler flew into a rage and slapped at me. Just when Dawnlight thought his life was in grave danger. Bang bang bang, continuous gunshots were fired at Crawler. The bullets pierced into the flesh, causing Crawler to let out a painful scream. Yi-Tian said, "What if my aim is lousy? I'll shoot up close and I refuse to believe I can't hit you." The two of them kept firing at Crawler at close range. Dawnlight knew that the time for his counterattack had come. He gripped the long blade, gathering strength in his right hand. Piercing into the Crawler's neck, double kill. At this point, the Crawler fell to the ground, unable to rise. Dawnlight expressed gratitude for the timely intervention of the two. After the intense battle just now, Dawnlight was too exhausted to support her own body. Fangchong quickly stepped forward to support the administrator. Fangchong suggested, "Would it be better to help you rest in a nearby shop first?" However, Yi-Ten expressed a different opinion, saying, "The commotion from the fight just now was quite loud. What if it attracts other enemies?" Dawnlight also agreed with Yi-Ten's suggestion and proposed that the two of them gather all the goods and rest a bit further away. As the sun set in the west, Yi-Ten pushed the cart along.